and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So here's a story of a lovely lady who was busy with 3 girls of her own, and then there were 4 men living all together, but they were all alone. That's right, we're about to head into the next movie in this series that I'm covering, which is the Brady Bunch sequel from 1996. Now, if you listen to last week's episode, you'll hear that I covered the Brady Bunch movie from 1995. And so I thought, why not just cover the sequel this next week? So I am. If you didn't already hear from last week, so go listen. But you already know how I feel about these movies. I love them a lot. I think they're wonderful parodies. I enjoy them quite a bit. I think in an interesting way, I think this movie, the Brady sequel, A Very Brady Sequel, is, very much a cult classic because of especially with the whole meme of the Sure-Jan kind of thing. That's something that's kind of like when you can turn into a meme, that's always like peak cult status, if you will. But yeah, I think this movie is also, the first movie, yes, is still campy, but this one takes it into overdrive, I feel like. And I kind of love that for it. Yeah, it's so crazy and just really leans into the Brady of it all. And I can appreciate that and enjoy that. So, my history with this film is, honestly, I don't even know if I watched the Brady Bunch movie first. I might have watched this first, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but I definitely remember seeing these as a child because, why not? And I definitely watched the Brady Bunch as a show, obviously, just beyond Nick and Night and stuff. But when these movies came out, I don't think I saw them in the theater or anything. I wasn't doing all that, but, and they were PG-13, so I couldn't technically see them without a parent, I guess. But, I still remember seeing them when I was young and them having an impression on me. And now being an older adult and, revisiting them and watching them again, I just love what they are. And I appreciate what they are in this world of darkness at this point. It's a nice little sunshine moment, if you will, of having these funny movies that don't take themselves too seriously. So I can appreciate that for what it is. But as we normally do on the show, I'm not going to, belabor the points or anything, but we will move into some figures of the movie, talk a little bit about how this movie came to be exactly, and then we'll move into a plot summary of the movie. So without further ado, let's move on to those figures. So A Very Brady Sequel was released on August 23rd, 1996, and was directed by Arlene Sanford. It was written by Harry Elfont, Deborah Kaplan, James Berg, and Stan Zimmerman. It was produced by Sherwood Schwartz, Lloyd J. Schwartz, and Alan Ladd Jr. We're looking at an estimated budget of about $12 million to $15 million and a gross US and Canada box office and gross worldwide box office of $21,440,752. We're looking at a Rotten Tomatoes score of 56% on the tomato meter and a 35% audience score. We're looking at an IMDb score of 5.8 out of 10 and a Letterboxd score of 2.9 out of 5. For our cast of characters, we have Gary Cole as Mike Brady, Shelley Long as Carol Brady, Christopher Daniel Barnes as Greg Brady, Christine Taylor as Marcia Brady, Paul Sutera as Peter Brady, Jennifer Elise Cox as Jan Brady, Jesse Lee as Bobby Brady, Olivia Hack as Cindy Brady, Henriette Menchel as Alice Nelson, Tim Matheson as Roy Martin / Trevor Thomas, Brian Van Holt as Warren Mullaney, and John Hillerman as Dr. Whitehead. This film also features cameos from Rupaul, reprising their role as Mrs. Cummings from the first film, Zsa Zsa Gabor in her last film role, Rosie O'Donnell, Barbara Eden, who's reprising her role as Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie, David Spade, and also Richard Belzer. Some critical response quotes about A Very Brady Sequel are as follows. We have Michael Dakina from themoviereport.com who states, breezy fun, but probably only a safe movie-going bet for camp connoisseurs, Brady maniacs, and fans of the first film. We then have Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times who states, I didn't laugh much during A Very Brady Sequel, but I did smile a lot. And we have Jeff Weiss from Desert News from Salt Lake City who states, as far as parodies are concerned, this one just isn't particularly funny. So before we move into any kind of plot summary of A Very Brady Sequel, I just wanted to touch a little bit on how this movie came to be. Like I think a lot of sequels that I've ever covered, I've only done really one, I guess, with Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. But this movie really came to be because Paramount pretty much had a 3-picture deal, I guess, with this property. This was just a continuation of what they were already going to do for this series. And so the first movie did very well, made almost like $15 million, I think, or something like that. Something crazy. And so, of course, they like moved into a sequel, and they literally released this like a year later. Like it was done so quickly in the regard. I think it's just, you know, they saw that the first one did well, and then they were like, oh, we're making a second one, of course. Everyone was brought back pretty much in the main cast. Although I will say there is a third movie that also stars Shelley Long and Gary Cole, but it replaces all of the children and also Alice. And it's called The Bradys Go to Washington, or The Bradys Go to the White House or something. Apparently it's really bad and I don't want to watch it. So I'm not going to. I think probably what came down to that was that obviously they had Gary Cole and Shelley Long. I think that this was probably because they didn't bring the other people back because of money, I think. There is a fun little story. I didn't share it last week, I don't think, but I will share it this week. I did mention that Christine Taylor has a podcast with David Lashare from Hey Dude and like Sabrina and stuff. And anyway, they had their second episode was like literally a Brady like reunion with the other people from the movie. Anyway, so like they talk about how like there was this on the first episode, or on the first movie, I think it was Jennifer Elise Cox who happened to just see there was like a binder that one of the assistants of the director had, and they ended up seeing how much the cast was making pretty much, and they saw that literally everybody was getting paid like not as much as they probably should have for this kind of thing. Bobby, who Jesse Lee Soffer, he actually was getting paid the most, I think. And like literally Christine Taylor, I think her and Jennifer Elise Cox were like they were getting paid the least apparently, which is crazy. So once they saw that, and they also saw that the sequel, you know, the first movie did good, that then I think they bumped up their salaries for the next movie so that they got more money, because this obviously did well. And then I guarantee you that the reason they're not in the third movie is because of the fact that they probably wanted more money. Even though I think this movie technically made less money at the box office or whatever than the first one did. But it was a little bit less regarded, if you will, which again, then I think turned it into a cult classic in a way. But that's probably exactly why they didn't come back for the third one. So it is what it is. That's pretty much how it came to be, you know, and so Betty Thomas had gone on to do other things, like, you know, she went and was doing Howard Stern's Private Parts, that movie. And so they brought in Arlene Sanford to direct this film. They also brought in, it was literally 4 writers, 2 of which are Harry Elfont and Deborah Kaplan, who we've talked about on this show before, who did Can't Hardly Wait. And then also they are the same people who did Josie and the Pussycats. Don't worry, I do want to maybe do a Josie and the Pussycats episode at some point. It might be really fun to do that because I think that movie's great. But anyway, yeah, that was part of what they were doing. They're this like duo that wrote, and you could definitely see like if you watch something like Josie and the Pussycats and this, especially like Can't Hardly Wait doesn't have as much of it, but I do think that Josie and the Pussycats and the Very Brady sequel have like a kindred spirit in a way, because they're just so over the top and campy. So I can appreciate that. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else there is really, but you know, for the most part, there's nothing like groundbreaking about like any of the production history of this movie. Apparently Arlene Sanford, this is just from what I've kind of gathered from hearing it on Christine Taylor's podcast and everything about this, is that I don't think that Jennifer Elise Cox said that I don't think Arlene Sanford liked her a whole lot, and same thing with Alice. Henriette Mentel also said that like Arlene did not like her, I guess, for whatever reason. Don't really know exactly why, but and you can see that Jennifer Elise Cox and Henriette don't have as much to do in that movie, which is just so odd to me. But, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. But of course, like, this movie comes out, and again, it didn't make as much money as the first movie did, and I think it was a little bit less regarded in that sphere. But I also think, like, you know, it is so weird that there's been this, like, resurgence of, you know, people loving, for example, like the Sure Jan meme, you know, that kind of came out of whatever, you know, but it's still just so great, and it gives that chance of, I don't know, revisiting something that is so super campy, and it's also like playing with the idea of, like, you know, we never understood why, we never found out what happened to Carol's husband in the show, so this actually kind of gives us a little bit of an answer in a way. And this movie is just so not grounded, I think, which is why it works for me more so, which I appreciate. Without further ado, though, I kind of already went over as much as I could about you know, that information. If you want to find out more information about this sequel and a little bit more about it, and just what it was like to do it, you can also check out, I think it's a Vox article from 2019 or 2020, I think it was, where they do talk about this whole movie. So I would definitely check that out if you want to just see what it was like to make this sequel and stuff. Because they do talk about that a little bit as well. I'm not just going to regurgitate what they talk about, so, you know, but I would definitely go check that out if you want to find out more information. But without further ado, though, we're now going to move into a plot summary of A Very Brady Sequel. So we begin our film with our Paramount logo, and then we go into this intro sequence we have in Thailand. So literally we're in the middle of Thailand with these two people who are going exploring, I guess. And so what they're doing is they're like walking through the mountains and shit a little bit, and then they end up digging up this particular, like, they have this dig that they're doing, and they end up finding this horse sculpture that is buried underneath the ground, I guess. And so they take this horse statue and they end up going back to their boat that they're going to, you know, sail away on. And so apparently this horse is a part of, like, this Tang dynasty, and it's worth a lot of money or something like that. And so this is why these adventurers, explorers, go and find it. So they get on their boat, and then we see the boat out at sea, and then we see that there is some guy who I guess is sabotaging the boat, so he, like, cuts the cord in the boat to do whatever it needs to, and this guy then jumps over the boat and he swims away, I guess. And so then what ends up happening is we are then brought into a auction, a fancy rich people auction, and we see that there's this particular horse sculpture that is now on auction and on for sale, I guess. But then we learn that this horse sculpture, there's only one of two of them, and the other particular horse sculpture, so these rich people are talking and be like, I wonder where the other one was. I wonder who owns it. I wonder what their story is. And of course, who else would own it but the Bradys? That's right, the Brady Bunch has this other horse sculpture. And we're moving now into our Brady Bunch title sequence like we had in the first movie. This is now just A Very Brady Sequel. That's where we get our nice little... It's literally like the same thing. I'm sure they literally just either use the same footage, or maybe they, because these guys don't really look that different. Like, these people literally don't look at all the difference. But anyway, so, you know, our little Brady sequence. And so then it starts just like a sitcom, and we see that Jan and Moesha are coming home from school. It's the last day of school. And I think also the other thing with this is that the way that Christine Taylor says the word school in this movie is honestly worthy of an Oscar. But anyway, so they're coming home from school, and, you know, Moesha is like the most popular girl in school. And then we see like Jan has her little button or something that says something about whatever. And they're like, well, Jan, did you have anybody sign your yearbook? Cause, you know, of course, like, a whole lot of people signed Moesha's yearbook, and something about, there was somebody who signed it, saying something about a menage a trois. And so, of course, she thinks like, you know, oh, that must mean that you're the most. Because, of course, Moesha doesn't know what a ménage à trois is. Kids, go look it up. But anyway, so you see that Jan, her orthodontist, I guess, like signed her yearbook. And she's like, Jan, your orthodontist isn't supposed to sign your yearbook. And then, of course, also her optometrist signed it as well. So it's just very funny and silly. We then have Peter and Carol. So Peter is talking about how he doesn't want to go to work with his dad because I guess they're doing like bring your kid to work day or something. And he thinks that his dad's job is boring as an architect, and being like, oh, well, Bobby's dad's like, you know, whatever, I don't know, Timmy's dad is like a firefighter, so he gets to hang out at the station. And this person's father is this, so they get to do this. And what do I get to do? And so Carol's all like, oh, you know, well, who do you think designed that firehouse, and who do you think designed this thing? You know, it's an architect, so your job actually, you know, your dad's job is a very important one, and all of that kind of stuff. You know, them having like a nice little back and forth. Then we go into Mike and Alice are talking. So they are talking in the kitchen, I believe. And they're talking, I believe, about how they have this wedding anniversary coming up for Mr. and Mrs. Brady. And so Mike is talking to Alice about it a little bit because I think she's going to be obviously cooking the food for them. So they're just talking about that a little bit. And then, of course, I think that Carol comes into the kitchen, and then, of course, they have to, like, shut up or whatever. Like, ooh, no. Anyway, so then we have... Again, this movie is all over the place, but then we have Greg is coming down the stairs while also, I think it was because Bobby and Cindy... Oh, you also know who all these people are. I mean, they're the same people from the first movie, so I'm not going to go into who they fucking are. Like, whatever. You heard my cast list. But anyway, so Bobby and Cindy, they come into the kitchen, and they're detectives, I guess, now. And so they're going to, like, go be detectives. And so they run out of the kitchen, they run up the stairs, but then Greg is coming down the stairs, and he's just, like, too cool for school. He has his, like, little 70s outfit going on. We only see so much of the real world interaction with the Bradys in this movie, but we just still get a little bit of it. But yeah, you have this, and Greg's all like too cool, I guess. And so he's talking about like, you know, I don't even know what the fuck he's doing. Like, he's just like, you know, he ends up calling Mike, Brady Mike, not dad. And then Mike's just like, hold on, wait a minute. Like, you're still going to call me dad. Like, you're not just going to call me Mike all of a sudden. But then what ends up happening is that, oh, I'm becoming a man, I'm becoming older, so, like, you know, I need my own space. And so pretty much Greg decides he's going to try and move up to the attic. And then Marsha's wondering, like, what's he doing? What is he doing? And then he's like, oh, yeah, I'm moving up to the attic. And then, you know, she's like, well, I need my own space, too. Like, I'm the oldest as well. And then I love this is where we get the line of Moesha saying, there's a new thing called women's lib, Greg. You know, it means women get whatever they want. And honestly, Moesha, feminist icon. But anyway, so you have that they both want to move up to the attic because they are both the oldest children. So, like, you know, they're like, you know what? I'm not going to move either. I'm going to move and, you know, whatever. Like, they're just, like, facing off at this point. So what else do you do to, like, help settle a decision? Of course, you're going to be challenged to make a house of cards. Okay, bitch? That's what you're going to do. So, rock, paper, scissors, trash. You know, like, pull in straws, found scalped. You know, whatever. But, like, it's just, they're just challenging each other to build a house of cards. And they're all kind of building it together. So, like, of course, the girls are with Moesha and the boys are with Greg. And so they're like, but they're all building the house of cards together. But I guess it's like whoever makes the house of cards fall first will lose. And then, of course, they will, whoever wins will get the attic or whatever. Anyway, so we see that, you know, Marsha's like putting on like the card or whatever. And then, you know, everything's all fine and dandy. But then what ends up happening is that I guess somebody, I think it was Jan or something. I don't remember who it is. But anyway, somebody has grape juice at some point, or maybe like Moesha, or I don't remember. Was it Alice who had grape juice or somebody had grape juice? Anyway, what ends up happening is that I think a rogue basketball somehow like comes through and like it goes over the house of cards. And so like then this grape juice like falls on the horse statue that is like in their living room. And of course you also hear like Moesha say, "Oh, my nose." Because again, it's a rogue ball. She was burned by the last one. But anyway, so you have all this and then they're all fighting with each other now because they're like, you know, fighting with one another, like, "Oh my god, we like ruined the horse statue, blah blah blah." And so Mike and Carol come into the like living room area where this is all happening, and they're like one at a time, and then you know Marsha's all like, "All right, I'll go first because I'm the prettiest," and they're explaining like, you know, we're building a house of cards because we're trying to figure out who should get the attic and blah 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 blah, and then you know she has more things, and then you whatever, I don't know, it's just all funny. Anyway, so then what ends up happening is it's decided by Mike, because, you know, the patriarch of the house, it's decided that they're both just going to live up there together because, you know, yeah, they should have their own space away from their siblings, but they're just going to share it anyway. Anyway, so then we have our introduction because somebody knocks on the door and Carol goes up, or I guess Mike goes up. Yes, Mike goes up and he answers the door, and it's this guy who's at the door. He introduces himself as Roy Martin, and he says that he's looking for Carol Brady and that he is her husband. And then, of course, like Carol is like dumbfounded and she falls to the floor. Roy Martin is played by Tim Matheson, who has been in movies. He's like, you know, an actor. He is mostly known, well, he's well known for being actually the voice as a kid of Johnny Quest. So he did that cartoon, which is kind of funny because not long after that cartoon came out, of course, the Brady Bunch came around. So I'm sure they had a little bit of that kid had a little bit of influence of why he got cast in this role, but he also is just a very good actor. But anyway, so you see that like Roy is there and he's all like explaining like what's gone on with him and, you know, where has he been all this time, because Carol has her suspicion. She's like, "Well, your voice sounds a lot different and you also look taller," and all of this. And so he's explaining like all of this. He is talking about, because of course this would technically mean that the girls are his daughters then. And so he says each one of their names. He's like, "Oh, Marsha. Oh, Jan. Isn't Marsha gorgeous?" And then he gets to Cindy and he calls her Sandy, which I thought was funny. And anyway, so we end up having this whole interaction and they decide like, okay, well, what else are we going to do? So like, you know, we have Roy and of course, what else are you to do but have meatloaf sandwiches with him as well. So they end up having dinner with him. Also, don't you call like a meatloaf sandwich? How can meatloaf be a sandwich first off? And then also, don't you just call that like a sloppy Joe at that point? That's kind of what that is, but like whatever. I don't know. I'm not a cook. But anyway, so you have meatloaf sandwiches. And anyway, so then Roy's talking about like, you know, oh, he's coming into town. So like, you know, I guess he'll just stay at some Fleabag motel or whatever. And then, you know, it's decided by Peter, stupid ass Peter. He's decided like, oh, like can't Mr. Martin stay with us? Like, and then of course, like, you know, Mike is all like, "Oh yeah, of course, let's do that. You can sleep in my den." And then I'm like, okay, great. So they let this bitch stay with them, is what I have in my notes. They don't know him or anything, but okay, whatever. I guess we'll just have you stay with us. Cool, great. So he like makes himself comfortable, and then I think the girls are upstairs talking about something or other. I don't remember what they're talking about. Oh, I guess like Jan is talking about like something with Marsha, and like she's feeling some way about herself because she has like her glasses and like she's got her braces and stuff like that, and she just feels like real ugly, right? So she's like, "I'm gonna go talk to the one person in this house who I actually think cares about me." But then we find out pretty soon after, that Roy is actually a fraud because he is calling somebody and he's pretty much talking about how like he's tracked down this horse statue to the Bradys and he is pretty much going to infiltrate their lives to get this horse statue back and be able to sell it for $20 million. So then in the meantime, like he has, Jan has come into the den to talk to him, and like, how do I get a boyfriend? And, you know, Roy is talking about like, you know, hey, maybe, you know, the only way you're going to get a boyfriend is if you make one up. And then Jan, with her just delusions of grandeur, she's just like, make one up. Gotcha. Thanks, Daddy. And it's just like, she's so unhinged. Anyway, so like then, because of course he was like smoking a cigarette, and so like he has to like throw it in like this like little pencil case or whatever, and then that sets a blaze. So that was kind of funny as well. But anyway, so then I have in my notes, I have this iconic bedroom scene. Okay, so the oldest kids, Greg and Moesha, they have moved up into the attic with one another. Moesha is on the right side, Greg is on the left side. So they're like, you know, oh, I gotta share my sweet pad with my sister. But then it turns a little weird, because then you see that Greg is noticing Moesha through their little curtain, because you only see the shadow of the person. And so then you see that like she's getting changed, and she's like brushing her hair, and like he's like interested in, you know, her or whatever. And then the vice versa with Moesha is that Marsha's like, you know, starting to brush her hair, and she goes 1, 2, 3, 4, because she is then enthralled by her brother Greg, because he's like taking his shirt off. And also Christopher Daniel Barnes has a really nice body, so hey, I mean, if he was not my brother, then yes, I'm not gonna have sex with my stepbrother. It's weird. But anyway, so, you know, they notice each other, and then this is one of my favorite parts of this movie, because like literally like they're both on the side of the curtain, and Greg says something about like, hey Moesha, and then Christine Taylor literally just goes, yes, Greg. And then she realizes, she's like, I mean, what? And it's just so funny. I think it's so stupid and wonderful. And they realize the fact of like, you know, wait, if Roy is really your father and our dad is not really your father, obviously, does that mean we're not related? As if they couldn't just make that determination themselves. But, you know, they realize this, and I also like how the song If Loving You Is Wrong, it just plays, because, oh my god, step brother, step sister porn at its finest, I guess, right? Anyway, so weird, but it's still an iconic scene. It's really good. Just yes, Greg. It's so good. Anyway, so then you have, oh, I think I'm talking about this breakfast scene. Okay, yeah. So there's this breakfast scene where like they're having breakfast in the morning. I don't know if Roy's there. I don't remember. I don't think he is, but they're like talking with one another, and so like they're just talking about whatever. But this is the iconic breakfast scene where you have Jan decides that she's gonna make up a boyfriend, I guess. And so, you know, I think Carol asks her, like, you know, oh, hey, honey, why are you not eating? Oh, did the blueberries get stuck in your braces again? And then Jan's just like, no, I'm watching my figure for my new boyfriend. They're like, new boyfriend? That's news. I'll say, what's his name, Jan? And then she says, his name is George. And then Marsha's like, George what? And then she's like, it's George Tropicana, because she looks at the orange juice. And then I love how, like, Carol's all like, oh, that's a nice name. Is he Cuban? And then she's like, wait a minute, never mind. And she's like, no, George Glass. And then, of course, you have the wonderful, iconic, you know, from Moesha, that's funny. I don't know a George Glass that goes to our school. And then, of course, like, you know, oh, because he's a transfer student. He just came in the last week of school. He's really good looking, and he thinks I'm super cool. And then, of course, you get the iconic line of, from Moesha, sure, Jan. And so, yeah, that all happened as well. So then they're off on their way, wherever the fuck they're going, you know, because Jan is literally crazy. But anyway, so then Peter and Roy talk a little bit. And so Peter is asking about, what is he asking about? He like asks Roy, like, oh, I don't want to be an architect like my dad. I want to be like an adventurer like you. And then pretty much Roy tells him like, well, for you to get anywhere in life, you have to be top dog. You have to be willing to lie, cheat, steal, or kill to get where you want to go. That's how I made it in the big house. So he's already like fucking himself over, but whatever. Anyway, so then Peter's all like, okay, thanks, Roy. Thanks, Mr. Martin. And so then we see the the Bradys at the pool. So here's the next scene we have. So they're at the pool because it is summer. And so we see that Moesha is there, cause you have like the 90s pool. This is like their interaction with the real world. So they're at the pool. And then of course, Moesha is there, playing Davy Jones's girl. You already know that they did that in the last movie. So she's getting a tan and all this stuff. And then you see Jan is there. Both of them have really good bodies too. Like, oh my God, I'm just like, ugh, if only. But anyways, so, this is Jan like being on the phone and she's like paging the operator or something. And she's just like, hello, this is George Glass. Can you page the very beautiful Jan Brady to have her call her boyfriend George Glass? And then she's like, you will? Thank you. It's so good. Jennifer Elise Cox is so funny in this movie. Oh my God, they're so good. And then Greg is also working at like the snack shack or whatever the fuck, slinging those hot dogs and like Cokes or whatever. And then of course he like asks these two girls like, oh, do you want a hot wiener with that? And then they're just like, ew, what the hell? Anyway, so then you have like, so Jan goes up to Moesha and she's all like, oh, Moesha, like, I think George is trying to page me. But then of course, like this this like guy comes up with like a boombox and he like, it drowns out the page because they're, gonna do the page for like whatever. Cause kids, what used to have to happen is you have to page somebody and you couldn't just text them. And, that's what happened as well. But anyway, but Moesha doesn't hear any of it and she's just like, honestly, Jan. And so like Jan's all like upset. She's sad. She's sitting on like a chair or whatever. And then you have our wonderful cameo from Rupaul as Mrs. Cummings. And so, she's like, now kids, you behave. I'll be right over here. And then she sees Jan and she's like, oh, hey, Jan, how's your summer? And Jan's like, it's okay, but... And then, Mrs. Cummings, being the very caring person she is, she's like, what is it, Jan? Even though school is out, I'm still your guidance counselor. And then Jan's all like, oh, well, I think I'm telling people something that isn't all the way true. And is that okay? And then, Mrs. Cummings is like, you have to be true to yourself, Jan. And, if you want to have a little bit of mystique to you, then child, you go, girl. It's like so good. And oh my God. And then of course it makes Jan feel better and everything. And then we have the fact that I guess Mrs. Cummings has 3 children, similar to how Carol has 3 children, where you have the beautiful one, the middle child, and the youngest one. And so they come up to their mother, Mrs. Cummings, I guess the black version of Jan, who is like, Mama, she keeps teasing me. And be like, now what did I tell you about fighting with your sister? And be like, but she started it and she never gets in trouble. Everyone loves Moesha. Moesha. It's just like so silly and funny. I think it's hilarious. I also love how the one girl's name is Moesha, apparently. And I'm just like, this is so silly. Also, when you think about it, I guess Mrs. Cummings has a husband who apparently can have them bear children. We don't know. We don't. You know what? Listen, we don't put anybody in boxes here at the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. So anyway, but then you have Greg going up to these like lifeguards or whatever, and they obviously don't think anything of him, but like they see this girl getting out of the pool, right? And so Greg decides he's going to go over there and he's going to like hit on this girl or whatever. So he like walks over. And then of course, like, do you hear that song of like, she's got it again? I think you do actually. But anyway, so then he's going up to her and he's like, hey, foxy lady. And then ends up turning around and it's Moesha. So, they're both just like, I gotta go. Again, step sibling porn. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway. So then you have Mike and Peter are at the office. I think Peter got a present, quote unquote, from Roy earlier, which were nunchucks he brought into the office with him. And anyway, so they're at the office and then like, Peter accidentally hits Mike's boss over the head with the nunchuck or whatever. And so, like, of course, Mike is completely oblivious to it. So I'm just like, okay, great. But anyway, so then this movie is really all over the place, everybody. So, like, just get into it. Kitty Carryall is missing now. So Kitty Carryall is the iconic doll of Cindy Brady. So she's missing. But, oh my God, what are we going to do now? And so then they're talking about this. Anyway, so I also think that if I'm not mistaken... This might be the scene where like Kitty Carryall's missing, and like I think Cindy goes into her parents' room before they go to bed to like talk about how she's missing or whatever. Be like, what are we gonna do? And then they have this whole conversation about like Kitty Carryall, but it's really them talking through their own feelings about what it's like for Roy to be back in the picture or whatever. And I love how Cindy's all like, "Are we still talking about the same Kitty Carryall?" And then Mike's just like, yes, we are. So I just love that. It's very funny. So then we have that, I guess the parents are there, Mike and Carol, but then the kids come in the car. They have this like red car, apparently, this like red convertible. Anyway, so they come up in there and, because they had gone to get the horse sculpture cleaned or whatever. And what ended up happening is that, I think it was also because Alice and Mike were talking about like the wedding anniversary or whatever. And then Carol like came into the picture again or whatever. And anyway, so the kids, like, they're bringing back the horse sculpture and they think like, and then Roy's also like, oh, hey, like, this is what's going on, da-da-da-da. Anyway, so, because I also think, again, this movie's all over the place. I don't remember everything about it. But, like, I also think, like, there was a conversation between Mike and Roy who are, like, talking about, like, hey, like, you gave my kid nunchucks today, and, like, you shouldn't do that. And then he's like, got it. I understood. But anyway, so ends up finding out, like, what's going on with that. And so Roy is adamant about trying to get his hands on this horse again, right? And so he thinks like, oh, the horse is somewhere, whatever. But it ends up getting, swooped in with the Bradys. He ends up getting, caught in their Brady whirlwind where they end up going shopping with him. So the Bradys take him kind of against his will to this new cool shopping center, which I think is literally the Grove in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken, which at that time was, I guess, new. And now it's just like an old, shopping center, I think. But anyway, so they go shopping with him. And it's so funny because this is like our other little like musical number that we get. We get 2 musical numbers in this movie, which is fabulous. But anyway, so this is one of them where it's the Time to Change song, which is iconic. And so they're like dancing around the Grove, I guess, and just like doing their thing. And then like and then Roy's there. He's just like not having any of it. He falls into the fountain as well. That happens. And they end up going to a literal vintage shop called Sha Na Na. And they end up getting him a particular like leisure suit. They bring him back home. So that's fun. Anyway, in the meantime of this, Alice is then going through Roy's bags to just kind of see whatever. And she ends up finding these mushrooms in his bag. And she was like, he never did touch my meatloaf or whatever. So, like, that's weird. But you know what? If I put a little bit of this in his dinner, he'll probably eat my cooking. So then you have Carol getting her hair done. So she's like walking down the road and she's like, she's deciding to get her hair done, and her hairstylist went out of business or whatever, or retired, and so she has to go get her hair done. So we have our nice fun little cameo from David Spade in this movie, where he plays Sergio, the hairdresser. So like you see this montage of like Carol getting her hair done. So you have like David Spade's there, then like some bald girl is there, I think, too, and so like they're doing her hair. Then Carol's all like, Sergio, like, because she's wearing this thing that's like then starting to smoke around her hair, and she's like, oh God. And so she's like, Sergio, where's that bald girl? It's just like very good. And ends up that she gets her hair done, but then it ends up happening that like literally the same thing, she gets the same hairstyle pretty much. And so obviously, of course, the kids get back from shopping with Roy, and so like I think this is the scene where we get Mike and him talking or whatever, because he's like, I love your sense of style. I have something just like that. And then Roy's just like, yeah, you're wearing it. And I think this is maybe where they have their conversation about like giving nunchucks to Peter or whatever. But anyway, so that happens. I then have in my notes, Carol and Roy talk, because Carol's all like, because of her conversation with Sergio, he was all like, well, why don't you just get a divorce? And then she's like, oh, I could never. And there's also allusions to like Carol having 2 husbands, and like, maybe wanting, anyway, we'll get into it. But then there's that. So Carol and Roy talk, and Carol's all like, she wants to divorce, but she can't say the word. And so Roy ends up, kind of taking over the conversation. She's just like, he is just like, hey, there's this horse sculpture I sent to you. Where is it? And then she's all like, I'm donating it to my women's, charity auction or whatever. Because they think they also had a scene earlier where I think Cindy and Bobby were looking for something, and Roy ends up like giving them money, because what ended up happening was like, this is where they found out where that horse sculpture was. That's what it was. This is before they went shopping. But Cindy and Bobby say like, they kind of messed it up. They had to go get it cleaned. And so, okay, now Roy knows where the horse sculpture is. So he wants to know like, where is it at right now? Carol's all like, I'm donating it, but you know what? You're gonna start the bidding at $50. And so of course, like, Roy's just like, oh, $50? Got it. Great. So then anyway, so, he's just like, all right, cool. I'm in the clear. This is great. Awesome. And so then Roy, they have dinner. They're having dinner now. And so Roy, is not eating the meatloaf, but he's eating spaghetti because Alice made a different dish for him. And what ends up happening is he's eating this pasta, he's eating this spaghetti, and he's eating it, and he's like, oh, like, this is really good. It's very good food. What did you make this with? And Alice is all like, well, I got some of your mushrooms that were out of your bag in your room, and, I put them into your pasta. And he's just like, oh, my mushrooms? And he's just like, oh boy. So then we end up having our fun little iconic scene that we also have in here, where it's literally Roy just tripping on mushrooms, while at the Brady's dinner table. And so we literally have a whole animated sequence in this movie of them. It's set to this I don't remember what the song is called. Good Morning Starlight, I guess. It's like a very 60s song. So Roy's tripping out, and he's just like, I think I have to go. And then of course, like, he's talking about like, I had a dream and you were there, and he's pretty much Dorothy at this point. So he's just like knocked off his ass at this point. And anyway, so then Carol goes in the kitchen with Alice, and she's all like, I think like Mr. Martin, like Roy, he just like, fell over at the table. Like, I hope he's okay. Like, did you do anything to his cooking? And she's just like, no, I mean, I ate some of the pasta myself and I'm fine. And so then, what ends up happening is that Alice decides she's going to start to go to bed. And so she walks into the, refrigerator, which is just makes you ascend to heaven. But anyway, so I think Alice comes out of the fridge at some point, and she's just like, so the light really does shut off when you close it. But then this movie's really all over the place, honestly. So like, one of the things we have is that Jan, because Marsha was asking like, hey Jan, like, if you have this boyfriend, like, why does he never call here? And then she's like, I think he's going to be calling really soon. This is also the same point where like Jan got flowers for herself to make it seem like she has a boyfriend that's like sending her flowers. And she like she tells the delivery boy to just, keep your change, keep it. So that's very funny. But anyway, in this situation though, so she decides to call a sex phone hotline to make it seem like she's talking to someone on the phone, of course. And so then she's just like talking, and then she has Marsha come downstairs, and she's like, do you want to talk to my boyfriend George? And then she's like takes her the phone, and she's just like, hi George, this is Marsha, Jan's older sister. And she's talking to this person and be like, you'll have to come out from New York and it'll cost extra. And something about a menage a trois or whatever. It's very funny. Anyway, so Jan, she's busted, and, Marsha finds out that she's actually been calling a, like, sex phone hotline, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, that happens. And then Greg and Roy are talking as well. So Greg goes to Roy after he's like waking up from his like trip. He's asking him about like, I have this chick I think is really groovy, and like, but I don't really know if I can be with her. And Roy just gives out his bad advice. Anyway, so then I guess like Peter, so Greg's just gonna like go after Marsha, I guess is what's gonna happen. It's just weird. Anyway, so then Mike and Peter, they're at this construction site of one of Mike's like designs or whatever. And so Mike and Peter at the construction site, I think it's that like Peter, I guess, decides to like, you know, be a dick to some of the, in Brady fashion, to some of the workers at the construction site. And Mike is all like, you know, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you, like, why are you talking to these people like this or whatever? And then Peter's all like, you know, oh, well, Mr. Martin told me, like, you know, I have to be ready to lie, steal, cheat, and kill or whatever. That's how you make it in the big house. And then so Mike's all like, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't quite understand that. And so Mike's boss, he's like, Mike, I think he means prison. And so he's like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then Mike's like, you know, hey, like, you know, keep an eye out on Peter. I'm going to like go and try to like figure some stuff out because I have my suspicions, pretty much. He never mentioned anything about like, Roy never mentioned anything about going to prison or anything like that. So Mike's going to go investigate. And then we see that Jan and Roy are, so Roy is trying to get over to this auction, I guess, because he knows that this auction is going to be happening for the horse sculpture. And so then Jan decides that she's going to go drive him there. And so, you know, it's like Jan just like going and driving, and she's a horrible driver. She doesn't know how to really. And so she's just like, oh no, I lost my contact lens. And, you know, she knocks into like this fire hydrant. What an unexpected rainstorm. And Jan really just needs help, everybody. But like, I love her so much. But anyway, so then we see that somehow, some way, with Jan not killing them, I guess, he ends up coming to the auction. And so the auction is going on, and so he's trying to like get this horse sculpture, but we see that good old Zsa Zsa Gabor, who is there with Rosie O Donnell in a uncredited cameo, we just see there, and they're playing themselves. So like Zsa Zsa is literally Zsa Zsa, and Rosie is literally Rosie. So like it's just, this movie is unhinged, everybody. But anyway, so then they're like dueling with each other to like, you know, whatever, and Zsa Zsa ends up winning the horse sculpture because she wants it so bad. And she has more money, I guess, technically than Roy does. But what ends up happening is like Roy pretty much takes that horse sculpture. He ends up taking it from Zsa Zsa Gabor, I guess. And anyway, so then there's in my notes I have that Jan and Moesha talk. And so I don't remember what they're talking about. They're talking about how like Greg is going out with Kathy Lawrence. Oh, and then I'm going out with this person. And so like, you know, these are people who would be totally against the other one. So like Kathy Lawrence beat out, you know, Moesha for head cheerleader. And then the guy that she's going out with, is the guy who beat out, you know, Greg for basketball, I think. And then, class president or whatever. So these are all things that are just coming from the show, I guess. Anyway, so then, yeah, you have Jan and Moesha. They're talking with each other. Roy and Carol are talking about something. I don't remember what they're talking about exactly, but they're trying to talk with one another and probably having to do, actually, you know what it is? I think they're probably talking about this horse sculpture or whatever, and how Roy, I guess, got it from Zsa Zsa, and whatever. So you're like, oh, it must mean something to you, right? And whatever. So that in the meantime, with all of this as well, Mike then ends up going to the police station, the LA County Police Station, I guess, where you just have this kind of Law and Order-esque thing going on. You do have Richard Belzer there, who is like the chief guy. Rest in peace, by the way. He's now passed away, but he's there, which is kind of funny because he was on Law and Order, so like it makes sense that he'd be in here. And he's talking about like, you know, oh hey, like, you know, I'm trying to find out about this guy who's coming to our lives, and like I need you to run a background check on him or something. And then Richard Belzer's all like, oh, it'll take 3 weeks or whatever. Be like, well, if I'm going to start this, I need something to dust the prints off of. What do you have? And so we see that Mike has the nunchucks. So he's like, can you use these? So then while Mike is going and being a detective, Moesha and Greg go on their dates respectively. So, but what ends up happening is that like, so Greg's date and Moesha's date, like they're together, and we just see that Moesha and Greg are more into each other than they are their dates. And then like Greg's date's all like, you know, get me out of here, leave, I want to go, take me with you. So it ends up being really weird. and kind of creepy. And in the meantime as well, we see that Jan shows up to the same Java Lava or wherever the hell they're at. That she ends up there too, and she is with her boyfriend George, and George is like a literal mannequin, and so she just like comes in there with like this mannequin, and she's like sitting with him. And it's really weird and very odd. She's like, "Oh, George, a kiss in public." There's something wrong with Jan Brady, everybody, in this movie. And she needs help. Please contact your local something or other. I don't know. Because she needs some help. She's not with reality, y'all. But anyway, so then Greg and Marsha's dates, they leave with each other. And then Greg and Marsha leave with each other. And then Jan leaves on her own too, and apparently people just thought it was like performance art that she was doing, which it really does seem like that. Anyway, we're coming up, quarter of the way through the movie, and anyway, so or we're halfway done. We see that Cindy and Bobby, they're going snooping through the garage because they're looking for Kitty Carryall. That's the other plot point in this, is that they're looking for Kitty Carryall and they're snooping in the garage, but then ends up Cindy finds Kitty Carryall, but then Bobby's like, "Oh, hey, I found this thing." And what ends up happening is they find out, so Bobby, being a detective throughout this whole movie, is finding out that there's a picture of the assistant to Roy, whose name is Trevor, and that actually looks more like Roy does. So they're like, "Oh, I think this guy is actually, this guy." So of course they share that with the other kids, and the kids find out about Roy. I think what ends up happening is that we have this moment between Marsha and Greg in the attic where they talk about "Oh, hey, I'd watch you score any day." And it just gets really weird. And they're about to kiss, actually, but then the other kids, come up to the attic where they're at, and they're all like, "Hey, we found out about Roy. He's not who he says he is." And so then they're going downstairs, and pretty much, Carol and Roy are going to be talking about something or other. But then what ends up happening is that the kids tell Carol about Roy, and then Roy is all like, "Actually, your kids make sense for once." And so what ends up happening is that he shows his evil plan of "I'm going to take this horse and I'm going to sell it for $20 million to this guy in Hawaii. And you know what? If nobody wants to get hurt, you're all gonna cooperate or whatever." And so he kidnaps Carol and takes her with him, and he ties up the rest of the family to the stairs, as you do. And he also, when Alice comes into the picture or whatever, and he says, they're like, "Alice, watch out, he's got a gun." And then he says "And I'm not afraid to use it, especially on you." I don't know what Alice did to him that was so bad, except to make him trip, I guess, but whatever. So then you see that Roy ties up the family to the literal stairs, and then you see each one of them has their own little internal monologue. So Bobby's all like, "If I had been a better detective, I could have, seen Mr. Martin for who he was. This is all my fault." And so all of them have "This is all my fault." Even Kitty Carryall has one where she's just like, "I'm sure you wouldn't tie me up if I was Barbie. This is all my fault." And so then I love also, of course, we have the Jan saying, "It was wrong to make up George Glass. This is all my fault." And then, of course, Marsha is just like, "This is all Jan's fault." And so that was always wonderful. But then they're like, before that, they're like, "Oh, you can't take my mommy. You can't take, this person." And then, of course, the kids just offer up Jan, obviously, because, but he didn't want Jan. Anyway, so then Mike comes back home. He's realized all about Roy and all of this. And so they're deciding, all right, well, what we're going to do now is we are going to head to Hawaii, and we are going to try and stop him. And so, they do that. So Mike leaves somewhere, and then the kids are all like, "Hey, can you help us, Dad? We need to get untied so we can go to Hawaii." But anyway, so they end up going to Hawaii. So they're on the plane at first, and then Marsha forgot her hairbrush. So of course they had to go back, get her hairbrush, and then, go on their way to Hawaii. And so they're on the plane. I think we might also have like a little scene as well where you see Roy and Carol in Hawaii, and they're like renting a car or something like that. And this is also where like Carol's trying to like needlepoint her way to safety, and she's like home sweet help, you know, kind of a thing. Anyway, so that's all fun and dandy. There's also like gay jokes in here where like, you know, oh, I wish I was gay, you know, and whatever. They don't know what that means, obviously. Again, I will say that I think the Bradys would have been for gays. I'm just saying that. But anyway, so we see that the Bradys and Alice are on the flight to Hawaii, and we see that Marsha's like brushing her hair and all that. And so then they end up going into like, you know, oh God, like this is so horrible. Like what else could we do to cheer ourselves up? And we got our second musical number of the movie, which is To Good Time Music, which is actually a banger of a song. And so they're like singing and dancing on the plane as you do. And anyway, so then they're singing throughout the aisles and all that kind of stuff. And so they make a whole production of it. It's so good. And then the flight attendant is all like, can I have your attention, please? Will the people in the aisles please, you know, stop singing and shut up? And so they go back to their seats and all that. But they're now cheered up at least. And so then you have the Bradys arriving in Hawaii. They're getting lays from the Hawaiian folks who meet them at the airport, and they're all getting together, and they're like, where's Marsha? And then she's like, Cindy's all like, you know, oh, she's over there getting laid by those Hawaiian boys. And so that's always very hilarious and funny. So you have that, and then you have that they arrive there, and they're kind of going all on their separate ways to go look for Carol and Roy. So then you have like Mike is in a boat being, you know, he's like being rowed to like look for his wife, and then Alice is doing the same thing, but she falls in the water. And then everybody, like I said, is kind of like splitting up and doing their own thing to try to find these people. And we also get our, you know, Jan is like looking for her mom or whatever. She's like, have you seen this woman? And whatever. And so she actually finds a guy by the name of George Glass. And George Glass is there with his family vacationing in Hawaii. And then, you know, they meet or whatever, and they like fall for each other and in love. It's nice. So yeah, you have that. And then you see that I think Cindy and Marsha are like walking along the beach kind of. And so Cindy's talking about like Kitty Carryall or something, and like whatever, I don't remember. But then we see that Greg is like surfing on the, you know, the waves, and he crashes. Oh no. And so they have to save him. And then of course, like Marsha took a life-saving class at the WYCA. But anyway, so, you know, she gives CPR to him, and then I think it's also like, you know, when Greg realizes that it's his sister that helped him, he says like, I gotta go, something suddenly came up, which is kind of funny. It was from the last movie where obviously he's getting a boner for his stepsister, I guess. Again, this is pretty much stepsister porn at this point. But anyway, so then we see that Roy is driving, and Carol and him end up with a flat tire. So then they end up having to they have to end up walking, I guess. So like all this time though, she's been letting her yarn, or she hasn't realized it maybe, that like her yarn has been like trailing her all this way. So like that's actually how the family, they find it and they follow it to a certain point. But Carol pretty much escapes Roy, and she ends up being able to end up at a place by Dr. Whitehead is his name. He's this like rich dude who lives in a mansion, and she ends up finding her way through a tunnel, I guess, and she ends up getting to his house, I guess. Dr. Whitehead is played by John Hillerman. John Hillerman in his final film role. He was from Magnum P.I., which is funny because there's Magnum P.I. music that plays in this, so obviously they knew who he was. And so the Bradys are walking through Hawaii, again, trailing this like yarn that Carol has left or whatever. And they end up figuring out where else it could be, you know, and what ends up happening is that Roy ends up going to this mansion. So he's there because Carol has already gotten there and like had told Dr. Whitehead about what's gone on. And so Roy ends up at the mansion. He's going to be like giving this to Dr. Whitehead, and he's going to get the $20 million and all that. But Dr. Whitehead has found out about Roy. He's not going to sell it to him, and all of this. And so, like, we somehow find out that I guess the Bradys and Gilligan's Island are somehow, like, mixed, because we find out that Dr. Whitehead was actually the father of Gilligan, I guess, from Gilligan's Island. And then, of course, like, Carol, I guess, was married to the professor, and so that's why they all went missing. I don't know, whatever. This movie makes no sense. But anyway, so then we see that the Bradys are there. They found Carol and Roy. And so Roy is all like, he comes up to Mike and he's just like, I'm going to kick your Brady butt. And then Mike is all like, hey, you've done this, this, and this, but when you use that kind of language in front of my children and my wife, there's going to be a problem. And so pretty much Mike ends up like knocking the fuck out of Roy. He's about that smoke. He's about that life. Anyway, so then we see that he punches him into the pool, and then Roy's just like, okay, I give up. And so then ends up Roy gets arrested, I guess, and is taken away. And so the family's all reunited back together. It's so nice. And so then, so like Dr. Whitehead is like, I'll give you this, for this horse statue, I'll give you this for $20 million. And then Mike's like, well, thanks for the offer, but we're going to decline it. Right. And so that's all fine and dandy. And then he's like, I have to respect your decision, but like, I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't upset me, or like, that I don't get something from it. I wish I could get, I wish, I had something to give you or whatever. And Cindy ends up giving him Kitty Carryall, because all this time she was so worried about her doll this time, but like now that her mommy's back and whatever, like Kitty Carryall doesn't even really seem like anything anymore to her. And, I think you should have her now. And then Dr. Whitehead takes her and is like, thank you, Cindy. I will cherish her like she's my own. And we then see that, so like Cindy's all like, or Carol's all like, oh, Cindy, you're growing up. And then I love this is where Cindy's Olivia Hack, the actress who plays Cindy, she says something of like to the effect of like, oh, she's growing up so fast. And then she says, I certainly am. And she doesn't have her lisp anymore because she's had a lisp throughout these two movies. And then, of course, like Jan's all like, hey, everybody, Cindy lost her lisp. They're like, oh, Jan. And again, it's all like crazy. Anyway, so then we end up back at the Brady house because all of this time they were doing this wedding anniversary. They're going to renew their vows. And so we have this wedding ending where we have George has come to the wedding with Jan, and Marcia and Jan talk, and they're like, they're just finally getting to peace and lovely and whatever. We see Marcia's new barrette that she was talking about. Love that. And just all of that good stuff. And yeah, everything is all peachy dandy, keen, wonderful. And then we see that they're going to throw the bouquet of flowers. And so Carol, has the girls, like they're going to be catching the bouquet. She throws the bouquet and then it ends up on the driveway, right? And we end up seeing that somebody comes up and they pick up the flowers, and then they all come over and they're like, hi, who are you? And then we see that it is Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie, Barbara Eden herself, and she's just like, oh, hello, I'm looking for Mike Brady. And be like, well, who are you? And then be like, I am his wife. And so then we have this whole thing of, I guess, Jeannie is now part of this canon as well, or at least somehow part of this. And end title sequence with the animation from earlier when Roy was tripping out. But yeah, that's pretty much the end of the movie, and that's the end of A Very Brady Sequel. So wrapping up with this, needless to say, I think that this movie is so unhinged and so weird. But that's what I kind of love about it. I think that this movie, it goes way deeper into the camp of it all with this particular movie series. I think at least the first one, had this kind of like, at least grounding in like, oh, okay, this is the reality of like, 90s Los Angeles, and then this is the Bradys, and how does that kind of mix together? But then in this movie, that's still sort of there, but not even really. Like, it feels like they're almost in their own little world in a way. And so I think that's really fun. But I think also just like the little pokings of like, not realizing what the term gay means and thinking that gay means happy and it doesn't just mean homosexual and stuff. Like, I think that's very funny because that kind of makes for some funny comedy, I feel like. Again, these movies are not all that mean, which is really nice. And so they're really, they're just really fun, and I'm glad to have covered them. And these are such, I think, for a lot of people, myself included, like, they're movies that just make you feel really good. I think they give you a certain level of nostalgia for something, a time where, the Brady Bunch was showing on TV and, in syndication more so. And so the fact that they made 2 movies from it, that are kind of received well and all that, I think was really, really nice and really fun. So, and I think that these movies are just perfect parody, really. And they really do a good job at poking fun at how ridiculous the Bradys are, but really also just like how ridiculous this culture was at the time, I guess. And it's now a fun little time capsule of the mid-90s, which I just think is really cool and is like so boss. So I don't think you can make movies like this anymore. I don't think they have the same charm sometimes when it comes to especially these kinds of like set up properties. So yeah, I really like them, and I think you should give them a watch. In regards to where you can watch them now, sometimes it comes up on Prime, I will say. You can rent it if you'd like, so it is on there. I know the Brady movie, I think, is streaming. It streams on Prime sometimes, and sometimes the sequel does as well. I would definitely rent it though, if anything. I also have the Blu-ray of this, so I have the two movie collection of these both, so I can watch them whenever I want. But yeah, I definitely think that if you are a fan of parody movies, if you're a fan of just comedy in general, or just like campiness, I definitely think this is something you should watch and give a shot to, because I don't think you'll regret it. I think it'll be a fun time. You don't have to think too much about it, and you can just enjoy the ridiculousness of it all, and just enjoy yourself wholeheartedly. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. If you'd like to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd just like to say hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the show on Instagram at cultcinemacircle and on Twitter at cultcinecircle. I tend to announce the movies that I'm going to be covering and just interact with people on there if they want. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On that platform, I tend to log the movies that I watch. I write little stupid reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 2004's 13 Going on 30. After total humiliation at her 13th birthday party, Jenna Rink wants to just hide until she's 30. With a little magic, her wish is granted. But it turns out that being 30 isn't always as awesome as she thought it would be. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, this is all Jan's fault. Take care. Bye.